Danite Radio.
Welcome to the Counter Revolution.
Dude,
our sound is good.
Dude, what up? Yeah, we didn't test our sound. I'm going to try and be louder, folks, so that it's not quite so shocking when Shadow starts talking.
We got some good feedback. You can actually go look at it. It's in the comment section on our YouTube page. Just like we asked. Shout out to Hogan.
Oh,
because
who did that?
He's on the podcast now.
Is it the only comment on there, or is Pepper's still on there?
His is on there from last week.
Oh.
Yeah. Did he comment on your comment or something? Or
I don't know.
no? Okay.
I just wanted to be the only one to comment.
We've actually got two people on. Two extras. So Golden's in Arizona. We got our cousin Hogan, our resident cult expert.
Sure.
He did a lot of reading on the Wikipedia.
He's been in several cults. He's led several cults.
What is it that Creed says on The Office?
Yeah,
I've been a part of several cults, both as a leader and as a follower. Yeah. You make more money as a leader, but you have more fun as a follower.
Yeah, that's Hogan. That's Hogan. And he's then our brother-in-law Jace, which is our resident sister taming expert.
Nice.
He's tamed the woman that could never be tamed.
I'm just a great victim, that's all.
He just walks around while she runs wild.
He gets beat up by the woman who could never be tamed. Do you think I'm too loud? That's what it's showing.
You're probably okay because
I'm extra quiet.
Pretty loud, I think.
Okay.
If you're bored at this point and we're blowing eardrums out,
so
turn it down and don't really listen. But
Jace works for Mitchell X as a shop guy, fabricator, right?
Yep.
He's a good welder. Hoger, you know how to weld, don't you?
Just a little bit. Just like a quick 10-minute lesson that Golden gave me, and then about a month of experience after that.
Classic.
You're as good as anyone sitting at this table, then.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about welding, let me know. I can show you a few pointers later on.
And yes, that is the metric by which we judge the people in our lives, based on how well they weld.
So, what are you doing now? You quit Vivint, right?
Yep. So
Wait. What'd you do for Vivint?
I was working at Vivint as a commissions analyst for the sales department.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
So you were
I
the
did
guy.
all the money. I made sure that people were getting paid enough and not getting paid too much. And anytime we needed to change pay scales and kind of use sales commission to push behavior in a certain direction, I was the person in charge of that.
Okay.
The brains, it sounds like, huh?
Just a little bit.
Dope. So what are you doing now, bro?
Now I'm working at Adobe as a financial analyst
Oh, nice.
who is over sales compensation.
Do you know Joshua Damer? I'm sure there's tons of people who
I do know him. Not from Adobe.
Oh,
but
because
from
you
Living
were in his
Living
ward.
Living.
That's hilarious right there. I forgot.
Like a neighbor, maybe?
I
think
do
that guy
know
used
him,
to be my
actually.
bishop.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
I
good
just
guy
started
right
at
there.
Adobe last Monday. So
Awesome.
Still getting the ropes.
That's cool. Good for you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I've been fortunate enough, both in my last role and in my new one, to be able to work from home with all the things going on. I know Rocky's itching to talk about the coronavirus, so I figured we could segue
Nice
there.
segue.
But
I'm professional already, folks.
I've been blessed enough to be able to work from home, which is a blessing and a curse because I get to stay in my own house all day, but I also have to stay in my own house all day.
Good on you. Except for then you're stuck in your house.
Yeah.
We've been blessed the same way, except for that we don't get to work from home because we're expendable.
We're
the
forced to
expendable
leave.
workforce.
Indeed. Yeah, we go deal with like retarded construction workers who all of a sudden become experts on how to prevent coronavirus. So like now at work we have to wear at least a bandana over our faces, which like some experts are like, well, you put a bandana over your face and the fragile virus can live in the bandana because you're keeping the bandana warm with your breath, you know? So it's amazing, the stupidity that the guy's like, he has a face shield on. He greets us every morning at the gate, you know? He has his face shield on with a mask. And then you roll down your window. He's like, only roll down your window 4 inches. And then he takes our temperature. Any symptoms? Like, my livelihood's here. Do you think I'm going to tell you if I'm sick, if I need money? Like, come on, man. So, it's dope. Anyways, I wanted to talk about the hysteria behind. I did some research on the drive over here. Yes, I was Googling and driving. What? Speak.
I think mass hysteria is a great segue into our final topic. I'm
All right.
intrigued by how well that's going to work out for us.
I'll keep that in mind.
But, sorry.
So, I did some research. Worldwide COVID deaths, 163,134. Anyone want to guess on the percentage of people that have died from COVID-19? Not very much.
Of everyone who's contracted it? Or
No, of the population.
The percentage of the overall population?
Yeah, we don't have to do it. Don't do it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have.
I was like,
you didn't even give us a number.
That's not very many. Out of 7 billion people, that's not very many people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Utah deaths, how many?
Oh, I just
The
looked at it
percentage
the
is
other day.
super low, actually.
Number of Utah deaths or percentage?
Number.
There's 24 last I checked.
Yeah, something like that.
The Google on the way over here said 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
25 or 4 million something?
Yeah, 3.9 million or something. Deaths in the United States.
Last I saw it was
48,000.
The numbers I found were 39,000.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, really? Oh, 40,000. Yeah, okay.
Where are you getting the numbers from? Is it CDC or?
The whatever Google pulls up for me.
Oh, okay. Because I know some of them, like, some people have said the CDC's reporting is slow or
It's
Sure.
delayed by a few
like
days.
some are getting some of the information from some of the clinics and others aren't getting the same information. And
Okay, let me start this conversation
close
with
enough.
I accept that these numbers could be off 100%, but I think it gives us a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with estimated deaths from the flu from October 1st, 2019 to April 4th, 2020. They can't know for sure. The CDC can only estimate.
Right, because not everybody who gets the flu is going into the doctor.
And the flu is not a
I
report.
remember reading it was something like they were getting like 1,200 a week or something like that.
So the CDC's estimate is 24,000 to 62,000 between October 2019 and April 1st.
Yeah.
These are preliminary estimates. They'll never know exactly how many because the influenza is not a reportable disease. One more number to give. Deaths in Sweden to swine flu or to coronavirus.
It's super low.
I
I
was
know
gonna
that
say
Sweden has had the best
less than
response
5.
and the best results.
What's that?
I was going to say less than 5.
1,500 deaths.
Oh, wow.
Population of Sweden?
That's a lot more than 5.
Yeah, barely.
Population 12 million or something?
10.23 million. Population in Utah?
3.9 million.
3.9 million. So the rate's a little higher, Sweden, right, than just Utah. But not in the U.S., not for the U.S. either, right?
For sure not.
Right.
Okay. Do you know what Sweden's done?
Absolutely nothing.
No? They've told susceptible people to stay home.
Oh, yeah. I forgot
That's
about that.
Their schools are still open.
Which susceptible people have to do every year for flu season anyway.
Sure.
They should just practice safer habits. They don't need to stay home necessarily.
Incomparable numbers to the flu, right? So then you hear about like people trying to do parking lot church and cops writing every parishioner tickets. So what are we showing to the left in this country? That all you have to do is paint a disease like it's scarier than it really is, and we'll just collapse. We've almost destroyed our country. We've given up our right to religious practice, right? Mm-hmm. If you hear about a church that's getting ticketed for having church in their parking lot, do you think you should show up at that church every Sunday, whether you're a member or not?
Yeah.
That's retarded.
Sure.
Not to mention the stimulus package we just got. I got $5,400. I am spending it. Because what am I going to do? Send it back? They're going to take it? They probably would, but I'm not sending it back. Better me have it than they do it to do something else with it, right? But still,
it just disappears.
We allowed it to happen. $2 trillion gone, right? All because we're scared of what?
Our self-imposed economic collapse.
I just don't understand what we're doing here. And this is not completely original. You know, I'm not the only person saying this. But what are we doing? I also heard a quote in relation to me spending that money. Tyrion Lannister. Have you seen Game of Thrones? Mm-hmm. Tyrion Lannister to Jaime Lannister. When he doesn't kill Ned Stark, what does he say? Jaime Lannister says, it wouldn't have been clean. Tyrion Lannister says, the lion does not concern himself with the opinion of the sheep. And I'm going to live by that from now on. I am the lion.
So you're going to kill people.
Not where I saw
coronavirus.
But tigers are cooler, so the tiger does not. So I
saw a meme earlier today that I thought was really funny, and it said, all that the coronavirus has shown us is that the United States is a third world country wearing a Gucci belt.
That's right.
And I was like, it's true, because like you look at the state of this and the like economic situation, and it's just people are not spending money because they're afraid they might need it later, which is good. I think that's smart, you know. Mm-hmm. It probably shows that people haven't lived within their means fully and now are kind of forced to, especially if they're out of a job or temporarily furloughed or whatever it may be. But I think it shows that there are definitely some holes in our current economic climate that could be repaired and could prevent this. I mean, there's got to be a problem if the economy is collapsing every 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's just constantly building and falling.
Sure.
And I don't think you'll fully correct that to where it doesn't happen, but I think there could be policy put in place to help the effect of that.
100%. Step away from fiat currency, for example, which will never happen until there's a real collapse. But, so like I was watching Joe Rogan the other day too, a clip from Joe Rogan, and he's like, well, this has been good. It shows that we will shut down this country if we have to. But why? What did we do? It will show that we won't do our own research and we'll shut down this country. We've had more deaths than Sweden per capita and outright. And what did Sweden do? Trusted their citizens to wash their hands, right? I mean, so we've shown, left, you want to shut down religion that you hate so bad? Just scare us a little. We'll stop, you know? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And I find Joe Rogan well thought out, but wrong most of the time.
He isn't the most intelligent person, but he can pass it off like he is, though.
Yeah, well, he thinks things through. You know, he has legit arguments for the way he thinks, but it's like, yeah, but at what point do we, you know? So then what? People don't obey. We throw them in camps. What do we do? You know, it's a bizarre thing that we've done here. Swine flu was way worse than this as far as numbers go so far. The difference is Sweden now has herd immunity. Do we have that herd immunity?
There's rumors that parts of the world have it. Like even in California, they may have it just because they're so closely grouped.
On top of each other. Yeah. Sure. And the deaths in New York have been bad because they're on top of each other, right? Mm-hmm. Which this is Dennis Prager's point is the left wants us all piled into skyscrapers and on trains. And look what it's doing. Killing everybody that lives in that situation, you know? New York has it rough because of that.
And also, the Gulag Archipelago, it's way easier to herd people up and ship them off if you going door to door is like going from here to Nate's bedroom and then to Ethan's bedroom and then upstairs. It's way easier to herd people up and ship them off if they're living on top of each other.
Sure.
And there's only one way out of a big building like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Everybody's got to go through the same entrance and exit.
well, there's another way, but I heard that way sucks. If you jump, you know.
I got you.
So yeah, that's my rant about coronavirus. I just don't get what we're doing here. I'm done with everything. I haven't changed anything. I still go to the gym, which, you know, sure, gets you in close contact with other people's sweat, but at the same time helps build your immune system. So what are we doing? Shutting down gyms. What are we? And another thing, one more thing.
Oh.
There's a preacher that died from COVID-19. He wouldn't shut down his church, and he died from COVID-19. And there was a news story. They were all, oh, see what you get for being religious. But who would you rather be? The writer of that story mocking the man of God, or the man of God who resisted, who stood up for his right to religion and died for it? I mean, he was 70 or 80 years old, you know. It's not, I mean, he was susceptible. Yeah. It's not like he was a young, healthy man who just died out of nowhere, you know. It's too bad he died, but he was 80, you know. And people die.
And not even beyond that, they're arresting people who go to the beach, where it's scientists are saying vitamin D helps. They're like,
sure,
stay home, but go outside every hour, spend an hour outside, do gardening, whatever, because the vitamin D is great for your immune system. And they're arresting people for going to the beach alone. I saw this video of them arresting a paddleboarder who was out in the water. He's the only one at the beach, the only one there. He's in the sunshine. He's paddleboarding, and they come out and arrest him.
There was another story.
Staying home.
Right. Sorry. I didn't
Well, a lot of those ones, it's like they've physically closed the beach. And so they're like, you're on a beach that's closed. You shouldn't be here. It's like going to a park after curfew. Sure. So it's hard for me because in a lot of situations I like try to see both sides and sympathize with both. And so it's hard for me to say like, yes, this is right, this is wrong. I'm good with staying home, and I'm glad that like maybe it's helping slow the spread, sure. But I'm also one of those people who's like stir crazy and just want to go back to normal life as much as possible.
And also, economically, the company you work for isn't struggling, from what I understand. People are buying Adobe products. People are utilizing Adobe employees. Adobe employees aren't out of work because there's work to do. There's things to do, and it can all be done remotely. Mm-hmm. That's not the case for every company, and there are a lot of smaller local businesses that are struggling because they can't stay in business. They can't keep employees coming into work, and so they just have to.
Yeah. Did you guys go out at all yesterday?
What's that?
We all worked.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yesterday,
it was crazy.
So my car registration expired in March. I was planning to go and get it registered the middle of March, but I was like, everything started shutting down, and I was like, well, let's just kind of see what happens. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 2 months, you know, we'll see. So I didn't get it registered in March, but I didn't need to drive the car because we didn't have anywhere we needed to go. So yesterday I decided I better just go get this registered now and just get it out of the way. So I went down the road to Jiffy Lube, and they were like, yep, go ahead, come around to the back and we'll pull you in. And I pulled back, and they were like, yeah, you can wait in the lobby or you can go over to Walmart. This was Jiffy Lube in Pleasant Grove. So I was like, I'll just hang out in the lobby. How long do you think it's going to be? And the guy's like, ooh, I don't know. And I was like, is it going to be like 10 minutes? Is it going to be like 10 hours?
Is this
Should I
your
come
first
back
time?
next week? Like, give me something here. Yeah. And he's like, it's probably going to be about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. This is the busiest we've been in 2 months. So I go in, there was people sitting in the lobby. There's probably, 4 or 5 other people, enough that we could be distant from each other and not like sitting on the same chair, So it was like, I was like, whatever, cool. Just put on a YouTube video and was just sitting there. And then driving home the whole way was traffic. There was just people out everywhere at the stores, at any businesses that were open, driving around. So I think people are starting to feel like they're ready to go out. And I think with the warmer weather, we'll probably see a decline. But I'm not a scientist. I don't know what's going to happen with it.
I think a large part of that would also be the Trump money coming in for everybody. Everybody got it this week, so
Yeah.
they're motivated to get out.
So even though I disagree with the manner in which it's administered, the idea is working. But I'm actually glad you're here for this, Hogan, because you and I are slightly different. You, sir, are a rule follower, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Don't tell me what I am.
So I only said that because I want you to disagree with me anytime you did, which you just did, which is good. But there's another story of a 70-year-old woman, I don't know where it was, who was out for a drive. All she did was go for a drive. She didn't get out. She didn't do anything. Cop pulls her over and writes her a ticket for being out when she's not supposed to because of COVID-19. Which I see where you're coming from with the whole, they're trying to stop a plague that hasn't panned out to be a plague, but still that's what they think they're doing. However, she's safer in her car than in her house, technically, as far as the COVID goes. She needs to get out. She needs to not go stir crazy. And so all we've done now, not only have we shown that we will kowtow to the wolves by accepting tickets. I hope that none of those church parishioners pay those tickets. They better not. They will, though. They will, because we're sheep, and we do that. But we've also shown that there are police officers who will follow orders without thinking about them. Really? You can't let the guy at the beach just freaking be alone. He's not. The spirit of the law is to keep people away from each other. He's farther away from people. The only human contact he's getting now is with you,
and by your own standards, you're creating
officer.
a risk, or a risk.
Same with the 70-year-old woman, perfectly safe in her car until the cop stands 4 feet away from her in her window, even closer.
And for sure, she rolled her window down.
You are putting that woman in more danger than she was ever in.
Right.
Other than driving a car. That's the next thing. If we're so worried about deaths in this country, we should drop the speed limits by 30 miles an hour everywhere.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I agree with the guy being ticketed on the beach. I think that that's ridiculous. I think that it takes a little bit more common sense from the officers. I think that their thought process is, if we allow this one person out here, other people are going to see him and they're going to start to come. And when does it escalate to the point where it's out of control? Sure, I understand that thinking. Was it right to give that guy a ticket? Probably not. I'd maybe say, hey, like, beach is supposed to be closed. You're okay for the moment, but why don't you pack up and head home soon? Something like that. Totally fine. Pulling over a woman in her car, that's a joke. Like, how do you know where she was going? Maybe she was going to the hospital to be tested. Maybe she has it and needs to admit herself, you know. And I've heard a lot of stories of, there was like a family that went to a park that was, the officer thought was closed, but there was a sign that said, families are fine to be here as long as they are isolated and there's space between them and they're keeping cleanliness, blah, blah, blah. And a cop came up and arrested the dad in front of his 6 and 3-year-old kid. Not wearing gloves, not wearing a mask. He called like 3 or 4 other officers. They all showed up. None of them, like, you know, wearing gloves or anything. And he gets arrested, brought into the station, and let go because it was a misunderstanding from the cop when they were the only people in the park, just their family.
Sure.
So I'm on both sides of the fence where I'm okay with people being inside. I think it's good to help, but I also think that there needs to be a little more common sense.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's the disagreement that fundamentally that I was talking about with you and I, because you mentioned park curfews. So it's just like being in a curfew in a park after curfew. Right. What business does a public park have having a curfew?
You mean, what business does a park that's paid for by taxpayers in restricting taxpayers from use in that park?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah, a logical person, a good moral person such as yourself says they're trying to tamp down on crime in the park, right? So what are we willing to trade for? Do I want to trade my right to be able to walk to that park if I get in a fight with my wife at 11 o'clock at night and cool off for safety from people maybe vandalizing that park, you know?
Especially around here where, as far as I understand, park crime is pretty petty.
Yeah, and
crime in parks is fairly petty.
And
teenagers, kids smoking weed.
I guess I don't
Sure.
have any statistics.
I happen to know that there's a park. Do you still live in the Erickson's house?
No.
Oh.
We live in American Fork.
So there's a park by your old house that has a curfew of 10 o'clock, I believe, that also has a man who lives by it.
More than one.
I won't say his name, but this man is into everybody's business. And anytime there's some tagging going on at that park, that man is on the phone with the cops.
And on the porch with a flashlight.
Which is what a stand-up citizen should be doing, right? Taking care of public property, right? So why can't that just be why can't we trust the citizens to take care of the parks, whether it's at 2 in the morning or 10 a.m., you know?
Right.
So I don't know. It comes down to what are you willing to trade for protection, you know? Are you willing to trade your right to go to the beach and surf alone, paddleboard alone, in order to be saved from a virus that doesn't kill any more people than the flu? And if you're susceptible to the flu or susceptible to coronavirus, you should be practicing safer habits anyways, washing your hands, you know.
So one quick argument.
Yes.
With the coronavirus.
Argue, Jace. Let's hear it.
He's like, you need to shut up.
So part of
the lion is so ready.
Yeah, little lion cub
Sorry,
coming
the
at
tiger.
you. So with the coronavirus, part of the problem is we don't know how many people have it or have had it, so we don't truly know how deadly it is. And so that's kind of where the argument of using it with the flu, as in the flu is worse or equal, falls apart in a sense, because the flu affects almost everybody every year. Like, you know somebody that got the flu this past year. You may have had it yourself. We also have a vaccine that many people choose not to use, which it doesn't always stop you from getting the flu, but it can lessen the effects or keep you from getting it.
Right.
We have nothing like that for corona. Obviously, they're trying to do that, but it's not working out. And so just the numbers of people that get the flu throws that off in relation to the coronavirus per deaths.
I don't know if you guys have ever listened to the H3 podcast.
No.
They're one that I listen to pretty regularly. Last week they had an episode with one of the, he's like a scientist over epidemics.
Epidemiologist.
Yeah.
Sure.
They had this doctor on. He's got 2 PhDs from Harvard and whatnot. Very smart guy, and was one of the original people talking about the coronavirus coming out. And he explained that, like swine flu, how many people died to swine flu in the world? It was like 250,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's the number we heard, between 120 and 500,000 or something.
And he was saying
worldwide. That's worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide.
that strain of the flu is one that circulates regularly every year. It's become so common that, people this flu season have gotten swine flu and didn't realize that it was that strain. And that each year the flu that's coming around is a slightly different strain from the one that was going around. So he said that he believes that eventually this type of coronavirus will probably spread the same way that swine flu has in the past, but said that it'll be less common, it'll be less deadly, people will have already had it and will have that herd immunity and things like that. But that it will just kind of progress slowly depending on how things play out.
Swine flu is a version of the Spanish flu that tore through the world in, what was it?
1917.
Yeah, 1917.
I think 1917.
And I have heard that theory that it will become like the flu. You'll get the coronavirus every year. We'll have to build immunity to it at some point.
Right. The common cold is a coronavirus.
Yeah. There's tons of coronaviruses already circulating every year anyways.
Yeah.
I think it's COVID-19 because it's the 19th
It was 2019 was when it was found.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't understand exactly what you were saying about the argument. Was it my argument that falls apart because of that? Because we don't know?
No, so just specifically using flu death, as in there's more of them than there are corona deaths, isn't a great argument because so many people get the flu.
Yeah.
And it's so common, whereas the coronavirus, we have no idea how many people have it.
But
what.
But the argument would be that more people get it than we know about, right?
Well, yeah.
So if anything, the number is higher. The death to contraction ratio is lower than what we think.
I'm just saying that you can't use it as a concrete hard number because we don't know.
Sure, and
we have a question mark where the exact statistics are.
And honestly, we don't know that that's the number of flu. That's just an estimate by the CDC.
Both numbers really. But we don't know what the actual number is. So it's a double guess as evidence, which isn't great.
However, I think if you look at the countries that have been very successful in slowing the spread of coronavirus, a lot of them, like Taiwan, Vietnam, all of these countries are countries that have put things in place to get as many people tested as possible. Mm-hmm. Vietnam has had 0 deaths. They've tested almost 300,000 people. And, look how close geographically they are to China and to some of the other hard-hit countries. But they put plans in place to get people washing their hands quickly and had an action plan in place. Sure. Where other countries have just kind of been like, well, let's wait and see if it gets us and what it does when it gets here, and then we'll act.
Sure.
Well, also, Vietnam they're a strong country. They endure things.
That's true. But, I mean, South Korea as well. South Korea is also a very good response where they got hit really hard at first and immediately acted, and have seen good results from it.
So I think that Vietnam needs to hire the gunner from Full Metal Jacket. If they run, they're VC. If they stand still, they're well-trained VC. How do you shoot innocent women and children? It's easy. I just don't lead them as far. Anyways, if you've seen that movie, you're laughing.
I haven't seen it, and I still like it.
Or you're a little sick to your stomach.
I'm not sure. I fear that what we've done, whether, and maybe what we've done has saved lives from coronavirus. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I fear, and a lot of the fear is, there'll be just as many deaths from the downturn in the economy, which is, there are numbers that argue for that. But my fear is, who are we showing that we are willing to be penned like sheep? What lion is out there watching our behavior when it comes to this? And what's the next fear that they're going to throw at us in order to corral the sheep?
I think my thought too is like, I don't believe that, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that think that COVID-19 was biochemically engineered and was spread by country or an enemy or whatever. I am not a part of that thought process. I don't believe that. Sure. But I think that it isn't a possible, or it's, how am I trying to phrase this? It's not unreasonable to think that someone might try to do that in the future. Mm-hmm. And I think that this situation is probably giving them a lot of ideas on how to handle things. So I hope that it never comes to that, but I think a lot of the damage that's been done, especially to our economy, is probably irreversible. Andrew Yang, who was running for president, one of the Democratic candidates, he talked a lot in his platform about, like automation taking jobs and things. And one of his points he's spoken on recently is that he feels that there are probably a lot of people who have lost their jobs, and those jobs aren't just going to be filled again when the economy comes back up. They've found ways to automate them or make way so that they can save money and get rid of people.
Sure.
So one quick thing, back to the conspiracy side of that. Where science is right now, nobody, including China, really has a technology to create a virus like this. They can alter ones that are already there, but it's not really a real risk. people in the industry of creating vaccines and fighting stuff like this, where they normally do it outside of just a certain situation like we're in now, they're not worried about people creating diseases. They're worried about ones that are present in mammals, mutating and jumping over into humans. That's where the real risk is at, and that's considered to be what happened with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So,
I too don't think it was created. I know if China created it, it backfired severely because now there's talks of divesting from China. Japan's already vowed to do it. I think that the U.S. should take a hard look at doing the same thing.
The UK has been heavily critical of China's response to the virus and their hiding of the real numbers.
Sure. And there are far friendlier countries with equally the manpower that we could invest in. India, Thailand, Hong Kong. There are other options. We act like China's our only option, but it's not.
It's just the cheapest.
And I don't know if it is. I think India could compete with China, don't you think?
I don't know. They have a lot more human rights there.
And I think it's a lot of that's
we do like our
I think
slavery
it's also
over
China
there.
has a lot of the infrastructure already built out to have the factories and provide what we need, and can get it done quickly. Where the other countries, it might take a little bit longer, cost a little more.
So maybe if we stopped paying our citizens $2 trillion and started helping India get the infrastructure going, we could pay a little bit more for our services. But I just think if the thought of China creating it is outlandish because of what Jay said and because it totally backfired. And my only thought is China blames the U.S. for spreading it, which if Trump was as diabolical as everyone says he is, look at what he's done, to just handle our situation with China. And then if he started the coronavirus, now everyone's wanting to divest in China. It is a brilliant plan, but you have to decide, is he stupid or is he smart? Leftist.
Is he smart enough
he
to come up with
he can't be both. Sorry.
And you've heard him talk. He's probably not that diabolical.
Dude, as far as his dealings with China goes, he has been brilliant. But like Jay said, nobody has the technology to do it. Maybe they contracted it and they were like, maybe we should spread this in China, but I doubt it. And that's the other thing about conspiracy theories. The reason they always fall short for me is it relies on government being smart enough to pull things off, and they never are.
And so one more layer to this that we could add to just continue this conversation would be that an idea or an argument that I've heard is that China did create it and they did release it onto their own people to try and kill their aging population, to create a rise in to lower their overall age and make the country stronger overall and less dependent on old people.
And I've also heard it was to control the uprisings in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Which it has been effective at that, for sure.
Yeah,
but
keeping people inside.
The thing is about that is the only thing that China has that everyone's so terrified of is their numbers of people, So I don't know if that would help them or not, but maybe it would. I don't know.
Just another idea. I don't think it's realistic in any way.
So, yeah. How long we got? Where are we at?
We're about 30 minutes in.
40 minutes.
All right. Should we talk about some cults or what?
Yeah, let's transition. Mass hysteria on
I'm sorry I dominated
scale.
the whole episode, but
it was beautiful.
I've enjoyed it thus far.
Good.
And it has been on Rocky's mind because we deal with it every day at work, like you said.
It's tough. It's hard to like you get on and you look at a news website and 9 out of 10 articles on the website will be about the coronavirus in some way, whether it's Trump's response to it or legal things that are going on, or its impact in different places and states. And
one last part on this, with what Rocky was kind of pointing at throughout this whole part, is there's a lot of scare tactics surrounding it. And something I've noticed about a lot of news sites is they will bring up cases of younger people getting it because it's been proven to affect older people in a worse way. So they say, 24-year-old died of this, but what they failed to mention in the article is that they were 1 year post-recovery of cancer and currently have all these other autoimmune diseases or something like that, to where they had no chance.
Sure.
There's no reason as to why they would beat it.
I also heard a stat that like almost no smokers have died from it. So,
That's
church, if you were ever going to reverse your rules about smoking,
Shout out Rocky.
Rocky's like, please. That's what Rocky spent his fast day last weekend fasting.
yeah. So there was another thing along those lines, and that is, I don't know. I don't know if it matters, but just the way, like, Trump's handling of the situation, you know? In my mind, he's gone. He should have went with his instinct. I feel like this is the first time Trump's ever been intimidated into doing something. His first instinct was like to say, look, this isn't worse than the flu. What are we doing? Well, let's not shut down the country. Then he got scared. He'd have been called a mass murderer had he not done this, and a bunch of people died. And this many people died. He'd been called a mass murderer. And so he allowed himself to be intimidated into doing what he's been doing. And I just don't. I wish that hadn't happened. He up to this point, he's been impervious to intimidation through the media, through anything, and he's lost that.
I think it's really interesting too when swine flu was like running rampant. Trump was on Twitter criticizing Obama so hard about his response.
Really?
And one of my favorite subreddits on Reddit is a Trump criticizes Trump, where it's him tweeting about things Obama did then later doing them himself. And one of them was about Obama's response to swine flu and saying, like, if people are dying of a pandemic under you as president, you should be impeached immediately. And I was like, hey, bud, 10 years later.
That's funny.
So I think that overall, I would agree. I think he was probably pressured and would have done things differently. I think for his sake, with how much outrage there already was in the nation about him, it's probably better that he caved and followed rather than going that way, because I think it would have been like riots in the streets and people going crazy.
Yeah, but they're just going to find something else to riot about too. You know?
Yeah, well, now it's conservatives rioting at the Capitol saying, let us leave our house.
Sure.
I think, I don't know, for me this all kind of sums up in one thing. These media outlets, everybody who's spreading this mass panic, they exist to sell themselves. The entire purpose of these media conglomerates is to sell newspapers. And so if they can do that through fear, or even through, this is going on, the world is so scary, but look at this bright ray of hope, the intention is to sell you and to read their paper. It's not a physical newspaper anymore. But that's the intention. They exist to sell themselves.
Who got me these?
Jace does.
Dusty picked them, and they aren't very good, so I'm giving them
Oh, so nice.
What is it, sparkling water?
Essentially, yeah. It's supposed to be good.
TV static in a can?
It's sparkling soda water?
Rocky loves sparkling water, and Jace got him a whole can. Or a whole package.
Sorry, folks. Sorry to get derailed. Sorry to derail your...
I was going to say that I won't take too long on this topic, but we talked about conspiracy theories regarding coronavirus, and I think that leads well into cults, because cults and conspiracies tend to go hand in hand.
And mass hysteria.
My favorite going on currently is that 5G is causing the coronavirus.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Let's just...
Do you have any quick thoughts on the topic?
Taken up too much time with coronavirus. Maybe we should stick with that. And I'm saying do the 5G thing, but maybe cults will be another episode.
Quick way to destroy 5G.
Yeah, I don't think it'll take too long.
There's 5G towers in a lot of places, and there's 5G towers that aren't in other places. There's no difference in how coronavirus is spread.
Wait, I haven't heard. What are you talking about? 5G caused coronavirus?
You don't spend enough time on Twitter.
I think a lot of people...
I spend zero time on Twitter.
I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it on Facebook, on Instagram. I've seen it from people from my mission that, we're the last people I would expect, but it's generally people who are anti-vaccinations. Are on this thought process that 5G is causing these outbreaks, and every time they roll out, 2G, 3G, 4G, every time there's this radioactive poisoning that hits the people, and there's always pandemics tied to the same time as these going out. And so they think that it's the government trying to get these towers up, and the radiation from it is making people sick, and they have us in lockdown now so that they can get more towers up without us noticing.
Yeah. So
I believe it. I swear.
my favorite thing, like I'll catch some Alex Jones once in a while, and he'll always be like, yeah, there's studies. I could show you studies of all the
a really good impression.
all the damaging effects of 5G on the immune system. But you've already read them. Like, no, I haven't. I want to see them, dude. What are you doing? You know, like, point these out, bro. And he's always like, but you've already read him. You know, like, he counts on the pride of his audience to be like, oh, of course I've read them, when they haven't seen any such study, you know? Like, it's so funny.
I think that's all we need to say on 5G. I just wanted to let people know it's out there, and it's crazy.
Here's my fear with 5G.
I think he's spot on with that, Alex Jones, though. Like, that approach, a lot of his audience are going to be like, yeah, I have read that.
Oh, yeah.
I totally remember those studies. He's right.
Seriously, dude, until you've talked to somebody that listens to Alex Jones, you're like, oh, this is how he gets away with it. You want this to be true, like, more than anything. But the 5G thing, here's my thing. They're always talking about AI is going to take over the planet, you know? And I'm always like, yeah, if AI decides to take over the planet, I'm just going to go hide at the point of the mountain. Because you always go to the point of the mountain. You still drop phone calls at the point of the mountain. Like, here comes the robot. At the point of the mountain, you know? So when 5G gets you over the point of the mountain with your phone calls, that's when I'll be scared that AI is going to take over the world. But I'm yet to see it. I doubt it'll happen. They said 4G would do it. Hasn't done it yet.
Yeah. Or around the reservoir. It's the same thing. You drop a call every time you go around the reservoir.
There you go.
So cults, huh?
We're doing it. We're jumping in.
All right.
Let's do it.
This is going to be a long episode, folks. Hey, Hogan, when you listen to this, it's going to be a long one.
Okay,
He's the only one that's going to listen.
Me and Noah? Is it
Noah?
Noah?
Noah with here. Sorry, Noah.
Dad, he doesn't have anything else going on. He's quarantined.
Yeah. What else are you going to do?
So, let's hear it. What you got, bro? What you got for us?
Lead us in, Shadow. Where do you want to go with this?
So I guess our overall point, I guess, of defense, I guess, or our overall question, oftentimes we hear people say that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a cult. So we just want to discuss what a cult is, the nature of it, why the church is not, and then maybe some lighthearted actual cults that exist or have existed and have since disappeared, because that's the nature of an actual cult. They disappear.
Right.
There you go. There's your lead-in.
Okay.
Lead us, Hogan. You're our resident cult expert.
Yeah, I know a lot. Here's what I know about cults. In modern English, a cult is a social group that is defined by its unusual religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs, or by its common interest in a particular personality, object, or goal. So what did you learn from that?
That felt like dropping a call gun over the phone. That was so
I'd much rather drop a call.
Basically what I understand, this was how I always defined a cult in my mind. Typically, a religion is focused on a higher power or a god or, whatever it is, some sort of energy out there. Normally, a cult is focused specifically on a singular individual.
The leader.
Right.
Right.
Now, you can look back over the period of time from the founding of the Church of Jesus Christ, and you can see, there were a lot of people who devoutly followed Joseph Smith. And I think there were probably some members in the early days of the church that were very overzealous and could easily be seen from outside people as those are followers of a cult. Does that make the church a cult?
Yeah, we discussed the Danites last week, who could definitely, which you can see why the church separated themselves from the Danites for that reason.
Exactly.
Even if none of the rumors about them were true, just the fact that those rumors existed, they needed to separate themselves from.
And so I think a lot of it too is not it's not necessarily on the organization, and not just speaking about the church, but of other churches as well. I think that it's sometimes the actions of certain members of the organization that are interpreted wrongly. And you can look back over time, like when Jesus Christ was on the earth, I'm sure he had a lot of people following him that were very overzealous, and all the Jews in Jerusalem were like, what is this uprising cult? There were many others around the time that were very similar and different ideals. So I think it's easy to see, and you could say the same about Moses with the children of Israel leaving Egypt, and all the Egyptians are like, what is this crazy cult going on, and poisoning our rivers and bringing all these bugs with them, and you could say the same about
this cult of sorcerers and magicians.
Yeah, the Prophet Muhammad and Islam. I'm sure at the time there was a lot of people that looked at it and said, this is some crazy cult following these people. And over time, they become founded religions with focus on God or Allah or whatever it may be. And maybe it's the behavior of some of the people that are taken the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, I don't know. I got a ton on this. We're going to be forever.
We're going for 2 hours.
We got nothing but time.
Yeah.
Let's just do a full 8 hours. So when I'm at work, I can start it in the morning and
it's a marathon.
Finish. When it ends, I'm like, I'm done with work.
I don't want you to forget, you've already heard this. It might not be great for 8 hours.
Trust me, I'll listen to this on repeat for the rest of my life. I love the sound of my own
voice. This is my moment, Mom. I made it.
I'm famous.
So if you guys are looking for a cult leader, Hogan is available. He loves himself.
You make a lot of money as a leader. I learned that.
So I listen to a lot of Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager loves Mormons. I think Dennis Prager loves members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Thank you. I was deeply offended.
He
heart was aching.
His thing is, he feels like it's the Jews' job, as it was the Jews' job to spread the gospel, right? The Jews failed, and the Latter-day Saints took that mantle up when the church was returned to the earth.
That's a theory that Dennis Prager has, or that's something that he feels.
His theory, he feels that it's still the Jews' job.
Okay.
And so he appreciates any religion that brings. So the difference between them is Jews don't feel like you necessarily have to convert to Judaism. You just have to become a moral monotheist. And Latter-day Saints recognize that there's an authority that comes with the church. You have to join the church. But he appreciates any religion that works as hard as we do to bring people to moral
to God
monotheism. So he'll get calls often about, and I think he talks about Latter-day Saint friends. I think he's very fond of the church. He's very fond of the saying, "By your fruits shall you know them," and say what you want about the church, but the fruits are good. And so he'll get lots of calls like, in line with what you say, churches will, people call and be like, well, they're a cult. And you say, well, how? They're not a cult, because in his mind, if a church lasts longer than 2 generations, so 40 years, and it becomes a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, they're not a cult. He's like, and then inevitably they say something like, yeah, but they have their own Bible. They have a separate Bible. He's like, right, like the New Testament, because Jews only believe in the Old Testament. So in his point of view, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. In his point of view, any religious Christian is the same as any Mormon. They're adding their own scripture to scripture that he feels is already good enough.
All the scripture, yeah,
sufficient. So, that's just to add to what you were saying as far as all churches start out as cults, and in Rome, Christians were called a cult. That's all there was to it.
Is that the original use of the word cult?
I'm not sure, but I think so. I think it is
from Latin.
I think it's Latin, which is what the Romans spoke. So, right?
Yes.
Anyways, so I also had It
says the origin of the word cult is early 17th century, originally denoting homage paid to a divinity, from French I don't speak French, or Latin. I don't speak Latin. But the word in Latin means worship.
Yeah.
From inhabited, cultivated, worshipped, etc.
There you go. So I also had a friend leave the church. I won't say his name, but he was very, and I don't know if he was just looking for excuses, trying to justify what he did, but he mentioned to me the cult-like behavior that was afforded to him after he left the church. He felt shunned by. And in my mind, it's always been, if you leave a cult, you get beat up, you get killed, you know. But
or you can't leave.
Yeah, or you can't leave. You're trapped. They lock you in a room, you know, whatever. But
which, to be fair, it is kind of difficult to leave the church.
Sure.
It can be hard, as far as they will always send missionaries. They will always be there to help when you need it. It can be kind of difficult, but at the same time, it's even more difficult to leave the Jewish faith.
Sure. And there is a human behavior that I witness because I tend to present outlandish ideas to people.
You? No.
And I notice that their behavior towards me changes. So is that cult, or is it just human nature to, when somebody goes against the grain of the herd, to look at that like it's a strange thing or even something to be feared?
Yeah. Call you crazy or zealot.
Yeah. So people always talk about like, well, I was shunned from culture. I hear this every time I talk to somebody who left the church. I was shunned by these people for... Okay. What community wouldn't do that when you started going against the beliefs of the community? I mean, where it's strongly Baptist in the South, you think they wouldn't do that to you? In the Middle East, where they're Muslim, you think they wouldn't do that to you? I mean, where is it human nature or is it cult? You know, is it a cult? If you are an atheist professor at a college and you tell the other atheist professors that you're joining a Christian church, you think they're just going to accept that? They're just going to, it's going to be same as business as usual? Or do you think you're going to be shunned?
And I think you can look at it and see it on both sides within the church. Like, people joining the church are like outcasts from their families and their job and things like that because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, their belief system has changed.
Yep.
And your belief system is a huge part of what makes up you and your personality.
Yep.
So I'm sure that they're probably talking about their new church all the time, and people around them are nervous about that. They don't really want any part. They think that this person is different, and they separate themselves. Yeah. And the same with people who leave the church and are talking to members of the church all the time.
Sure.
You know, it may not necessarily be, we hate you because you've joined this new church. In some circumstances it is, but it may not always be that. But it does swing both ways, you can see.
Sure. So it
separation
frustrates me when human nature is confused with cultive personality, where as far as the church is concerned. You know, like, well, it's a cult. So, all right, if Latter-day Saints are a cult, then any church that alive is a cult, because I feel like, or I know that anytime you go against the grain of your community, you are subjecting yourself at best to sidelong looks, and at worst expulsion from the community. You know, and it doesn't matter what beliefs you're talking about. So
one of my professors at BYU, I was there for 3 semesters and took a bunch of religion classes. I was trying to get them all in as fast as I could. Yeah, just for a short little while. Right. I went there for 3 semesters, wanted to change my major. They didn't have it at BYU, so.
Where'd you go after that?
Western Governors.
What is your major?
It's data science. That's what I'm currently doing, so I've got about a year left.
Nice.
But while I was there, one of my teachers, he was one of the most intelligent people I've ever talked to. This older gentleman. He was getting his master's in theology from Notre Dame when he converted to the church. He had grown up his entire life from the East Coast and was Eastern Orthodox. And, you know, as part of his degree was studying all religions. And he thought, I really want to meet with with the Mormon missionaries. I want to get a Book of Mormon. I want to sit down with these guys. I want to hear them teach me these lessons, because he'd been reading about the church. And so he knew, he's like, I'm not going to get baptized. I'm not going to become a part of it. Like, I'm just sitting down to learn. And then he's like, and then very shortly in, had a really powerful experience and just knew immediately that it was true. And so he joined the church, but his focus of study was still in theology. And so the primary classes that he teaches at BYU are, survey of world religions and teaching in detail about specific religions and things like that. And he would always bring up, things that he would see in the church that his friends who were not members of the church would point out. And he was one of those people that would always go out of his way to meet people that were devout in other religions so that he could learn about it. He would attend other churches and other services. And he was, at the time, a member of his own stake presidency. Mm-hmm. And he said, one of the things I hear members of the church say all the time from the pulpit or, wherever it may be, is they always say, the church has to be true because look at how much opposition the church receives. And he's like, I hear that all the time, and I can't disagree with that statement more, because if that's true, then the Jehovah's Witnesses has to be the true church because everybody hates them.
Yeah.
He's like, they get so much flack from everyone because they're out there knocking on people's doors. They're very different. They're always called a cult. And he's like, they're no more a cult than we are. We're a religion, and they're a religion. And he would always bring that up in class. I probably heard him say that like a dozen times. That he's like, if that statement's true, then we're in the wrong church.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. And that is an example of human nature being used to explain something, religious, just like I was saying as far as the cult, it's just human nature, and it's weird. But
I think don't know, just slap something onto it and claim that it's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Lehi says it best when he says that there must be opposition in all things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Not my life, though. My life's easy. However, I have 6 kids, dude. Every time I think about how much we spend on birthdays at my house, I consider switching over to the J-Dubs for sure. I save tons of money. No Christmas presents. No birthday presents. The only holiday they celebrate? Parents' anniversary. That's what I'm talking about. You start buying me presents, you dumb kids.
Dumb kids.
But I think, the thought of, like, cult behavior doesn't just have to be tied to a religion. Like, when we initially started talking about the podcast, we talked about Vivint and the idea of summer sales bros and, these people who devote their entire summer to going out and knocking on doors in this lifestyle. And, nothing against Vivint. I work there and still love the company. I can say that I drank the Kool-Aid, as Jace has investigated here. But I looked at it and thought a lot about, what is it that brings this behavior, this thing. And I think it's a lot of, there can be cult-like behavior associated with people who are seeking after money. You go out and you do summer sales because you can make a lot of money if you're good at it. And there are a lot of people who would go out, they work 4 months out of the year and make $200,000, take the rest of the year off. They come home and buy a brand new Toyota Tacoma in cash and, flaunt their money when they're trying to pick up girls. And that's where you get the attitude of the Provo All-Star or, whatever you want to call it. And I think that that's not something that's directly tied to Vivint. I think you can see that with any other summer sales company, whether it's pest control or other security companies. It's more of an attitude of a certain type of person rather than the belief system of an organization.
There's actually a documentary on the cult of personality of management in Walmart. They do weird stuff as you climb the ranks. So Walmart, it's a genius business move, I guess, but they pay all their workers the minimum. It's not minimum wage, but it's not very much. And then the second when you hit management, you're looking at like $100K a year. Mm-hmm. and they fly you back east. You go to these conferences. They do chants and stuff. You know.
Have you guys ever seen Superstore?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So funny.
Superstore has the same exact thing, and a lot of it you can tell they've taken from Walmart.
Sure.
But the one character gets promoted to manager, and she's making $120,000 a year, going up from like $30,000 a year.
Yeah. So it's just like that, and that's and you're right. The difference is the money thing in Vivint and Walmart. So you see this weird behavior in Vivint, and people write it off like, oh well, I mean they're making $200,000 a year. Whatever they're doing works, you know. The rewards of the church or any church are less obvious to the outsider. So they're like, you do this for nothing, you know, which isn't true by any means if you are a true believer, but
and especially not true.
It's interesting the pass that certain organizations get because of the money thing, whereas the payment from the church is more of a spiritual.
So a huge part of this also is, while with Vivint, the money may bring people in, or with the church, just people you know may bring you in. A huge part of the psychology behind it is everybody's looking for some sort of belonging, especially teenagers that would be going into Vivint to do summer sales.
There's the human nature, for sure.
Yeah, and so that aspect of it is a huge driver behind cults and to why they continue to pop out in the world and why they're so prevalent.
Sure.
And then I found a quick thing. So the average sales associate at Walmart makes $14.26 an hour, and the average store manager makes $175,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, and that's from NBC. So yeah, real numbers for you guys.
Yeah, that's why Jason's here. He's our research man.
So it's interesting. I think that's the main thing I wanted to focus on is
that is
not like
dope personality.
Yeah, is that Jace is a really good researcher.
And thank you.
And that
he's so good at research. Maybe we should start worshiping him.
You guys got any money?
Do you want my wife?
I guess. Do you have to take the kids?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Never mind. We're good.
But Rocky will raise them for you.
You can use them.
They're yours.
Slaves.
They're seed unto the
You
Lord
own
of
them.
Jason.
You can just have anything they
Is that
earn
what
for the
we're
rest of their
getting
lives. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But yeah, I think it's like there are obviously organizations that are cults, and maybe members of those organizations join them fully believing in whatever higher being they attest to.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at, what was that one cult in like the 70s or 80s where they all went in that cave and then killed themselves?
That's Jim Jones, Reverend Jim Jones with Jonestown in Guyana, I believe. That's where Drink the Kool-Aid came from.
Oh yeah, because he had some like special juice or something.
Cyanide and
Grape Kool-Aid with cyanide in it.
Yeah.
Killed 900 people.
And maybe these people, there might have been some honest worshiping people who, may not have been the brightest fellows, but believed that they were honestly following whatever God he attested to, and thought that in doing that they were doing God's will. Mm-hmm. And so I think the thing is, what it comes back to is the testimony of the Spirit. You have to be able to discern for yourself what truth is, and be able to say, yeah, this is true or this is not true. And for us as members of the Church of Jesus Christ, it's the Book of Mormon. We always say that the Book of Mormon's the keystone of the religion, but if the Book of Mormon is true, then Joseph Smith was a prophet and the church is true. Mm-hmm. And so, be what it may, people can look at it and say that we're a cult. There was one guy that tried to Bible bash with me in New Zealand on my mission, and
you're so lucky.
Yeah, well, I didn't have a lot of Bible bashers. That's where I think I consider myself the most lucky. I wasn't in Oklahoma.
Oh, you missed out, bro.
But
Bible bashing is the best.
When we came across them, they were pretty fervent. And, a lot of the times we tried to just try to keep it calm and just say, hey, let us just teach you what we believe, and you can do what you want with it. And a lot of times, they weren't willing to hear it. They wanted to ask us a million questions and get all these answers. And one guy that I met, I was just over halfway through my mission. We met his wife on the street, this very nice, small little Indian lady who was like, oh, hey, you should come talk to my husband. He's very interested. And I was like, oh, well, that's random. She like pulled us aside in the grocery store. So we were like, yeah, where do you live? When do you want us to come by? And
Never
we show
trust
up.
the wife, man.
Yeah.
Her husband's not that interested.
We show up. The wife opens the door and she's like, please come in. We walk in. The wife just leaves. And we were like, what the heck? And I looked at the picture on the wall, and there's a picture of the wife, this Indian woman, a picture of the husband, a black man, and a picture of their children, 3 Chinese kids. And I was like, what? I was really confused, and we met the guy, and he was super nice, Baptist guy. And he sat us down and was like, hey, I just wanted to hear about it. Teach me a little bit. So we start going through everything. And this guy was very prepared for us. We went in there ready to teach a first lesson. Hey, what do you know about our church? Here's where we come from. Here's what it is. And this guy pulls out this piece of paper from under his couch pillow, and it was literally like 60 sheets of paper he had printed off the internet with all this information and like anti-Mormon literature and whatever. And we were like, oh, okay, so this is what we walked into. So then we just tried to like keep it as civil as possible. And then we had learned that he had had dozens of other missionaries that he'd brought over in the past. Our ward mission leader had been to this guy's house like half a dozen times. And so we were like, great, we're trapped now. But we just kept telling him, if this church is true, the Spirit will tell you. Read the Book of Mormon and pray about it. And he's like, I've read the Book of Mormon cover to cover. But the thing is, the Bible doesn't tell me that I need to pray about it to know that it's true. Why would the Book of Mormon tell me that I need to pray about it? If the Bible itself doesn't do that. And I was like, James said, if you have questions, ask God. And he's like, that's not what James meant. Just was going on. And so we just kept saying, look, you can take our word for it. You're not going to change. We're not going to change. If you really want to know, pray about the church. And he would not do it. So it ended up just ending in a stalemate. Like 3 months down the road, walking through the grocery store, a little Indian woman comes up and says, oh, hi, my husband would like to meet with you. And I said, oh, yeah, your husband's so-and-so, right? Yeah, we've been by.
Yeah, we met him.
Yeah, and so I was like, if he has questions, have him give us a call. But,
James is not popular among modern-day Christians because he also says stuff like...
The faith without works.
Yeah, faith without works. They don't like that. They don't like that. They like that the Savior is enough, but not according to James, which he is enough. Don't get me wrong. I'm sorry I said that, but there's faith without works does not do you any good.
Yep. You need both.
Did you have something?
I have a story to tell on the Book of James, but it's a tangent. If we have more to say about this, I won't go down that tangent.
Hit it, dude.
It's more related than what I have to say. So
okay. When I was in Oklahoma, we met this member who served in Brazil. And we told us they used the Book of James to quote, or to prove some argument that they had. They said, well, in the Book of James it says, insert, the same situation we're talking about. And the guy said, oh, I don't believe in the Book of James. And they're like, wait, what? I don't believe in the Book of James. Like you believe in all the rest of the Bible but that book. Oh, yeah, I don't believe in the Book of James.
Well, I mean, it's like if some Bible basher said to you, well, it's in the Songs of Solomon, and you're like, we don't believe in the Songs of Solomon.
Right. But his response, and they're like, why not? And his response is what's humorous about the story. He said, because James is a descendant of Cain, and Cain was a child of Eve with Satan.
Wow.
And they're like, no, he's not. And obviously they can't get anywhere from that because the guy was just out of his mind spitting crazy stuff. But it illustrates the idea of you can disbelieve anything if
that is the kind of personality that listens to Alex Jones. That's exactly what you're looking at. Because I want to believe this, therefore I don't believe that because it disproves this.
It's funny, like, going on a mission, obviously, you meet a lot of people that you wouldn't meet normally, and you talk to them about religious beliefs, which you wouldn't do normally, and it shows you that there's a lot of people out there that just believe a lot of things that, to me, sound very crazy. Mm-hmm. And to me, I'm like, we're a cult? whatever you believe, that's a cult. Like, which
That's
just comes
crazy.
back to human nature. But there was one person I met who was like, yeah, you know, you and I, we're not going to get along very well. And so then I was like, oh, why is that? She's like, well, we just don't line up on our beliefs. And I was like, cool, I'd love to learn about what you believe. And she's like, well, first of all, I believe that God's a woman. And I was like, all right. Expound on that a little more.
Great start. You're off to a great start.
She's like, well, how else would he have created the world? Okay. I'm like, all right. And then she wouldn't expound any further and wouldn't tell us any more. But it was one of those things that I was like, I'm pretty sure in the Bible it says that God was the Father. And when it talks about Jesus Christ, it says he. So
I actually had a super similar conversation, but she said it was Ishtar, the Assyrian goddess of birth.
My
Very similar.
favorite thing that Jordan Peterson says, and it might be a Syrian thing. I don't know. One of those ancient religions believed that God, who is order, made love to chaos, which created the world. And therefore, the feminine is chaos and the male is order. Your wife doesn't like to hear that when you tell her, but it's hilarious to me. But
Well, it's not a super great logical argument.
Prove that, Shadow, please.
This is going to be one of those points of view that gets me ostracized in society.
is
As
it
if
that
you
God's
haven't
going to let
already
you
been.
smoke in heaven?
That
for
would get him
sure.
ostracized. That makes him so popular. Got in the
So,
right circles for that one.
for sure. I
AA
think that
loves him.
the Celestial Kingdom is a smoke room at a bowling alley. No, I'm just kidding. You guys know who the Branch Davidians are?
No.
Have you heard of Waco, Texas?
Yes.
Okay. The Branch Davidians were the cult in Waco, Texas.
Okay.
They had a standoff with the federal government.
The Branch Davidians, I don't remember the guy's name. Do you know him?
I'll look it up.
Anyways, he started a religion, also known as a cult.
Benjamin Roden.
Benjamin Roden.
An offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Interesting.
He and any time, this is the problem. This is the church's major problem with the cult thing. Anytime a guy starts a cult, what's his first move?
Marry a bunch of wives.
Yeah, start taking all his friends' wives, which is what man's nature is, you know. And so they also started hoarding guns, you know. However, the sheriff in Waco was like, I love the Branch Davidians. They are good citizens. It's always a good experience when we go there. They're super nice. However, one young lady calls the FBI and starts talking about how the Branch Davidians raped her. Yada, yada, yada. Did all this stuff. Turns out, young lady lied. Never even happened. But that's what started the standoff with the FBI. The Branch Davidians stood their ground, stood for their religious freedom, and the FBI did what the FBI often does, which is, this isn't going anywhere by peace. Let's just set the compound on fire. Not only killing the men, but killing the women and the children in the compound. I don't remember how many people died, but a lot of people.
26 in the initial raid and 76 during the final assault.
Yeah, a lot of people were burned alive. Let's just put it that way.
He slaughtered them like animals.
I don't think you can do that to animals.
So the Branch Davidians stood up for what they believed, and in my mind, were murdered for it. Who is more of a cult in that situation? The Branch Davidians, who stayed on their property. As far as everyone knows, everyone was there of their own free will. Or the FBI, who, you don't believe what we believe? we're going to burn you to death. We're going to burn you alive. And I am not anti-law enforcement, but I am pro-common sense law enforcement. What are you doing, FBI? You had no business being there. Check the source. Maybe you should talk to the girl and see if she's actually... How hard do you think it would be to take a 14-year-old girl and narrow down whether she's lying? I got news for you. Not that hard. I have kids. You can pin down a lie pretty quick with children. So what...
And we have a process for that in this country.
I got heated.
We have a process for what happened, and there's a way that is to be handled in this country.
And that was part of the problem. They weren't doing the process. However, I don't know if indictments were handed down. I don't know.
Right.
And they refused to show up. But I do know this. Sure, the Branch Davidians could have done things better. Maybe. However, should they have had to? Is my only question. And did they deserve to be burned alive for what happened? Did the women and children in that compound deserve to be killed for what happened? My first instinct is no. So let's say they were there, they were brainwashed by this guy. Did they deserve to die for that? You know?
Yes.
Well, he brainwashed them, but we burned them alive, so we got them. Sorry, folks. I'm screaming into the mic.
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to attack the subject of cults, and you can look further into, other things, the Freemasons and the Illuminati and all these different things. Like, you can attack these all, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you believe that they're cults. But I think ultimately the main thing that comes down is to, one, do your research, truly investigate, and, especially when it comes to the church, ask God. And you can do that about any of these. If you want to know if some teaching from another religion or organization is true and you should adhere to it, pray about it. I think that's really ultimately what it's going to come down to, and also just doing the mental math yourself to figure out what goes into it.
And that applies to the teaching of the CDC and the World Health Organization. Pray about it. Figure out what's right for you. Figure out what you need to do to...
Yeah, and I love that. We're not here. Don't hide the information, but have it out. Think about it first, right? I just don't... I never understood that impulse of, whoa, we don't want our kids seeing that on the internet because it could lead them to leave the church. Like, one day they're going to be autonomous people, and you're not going to have control over what they see on the internet. Yeah. You barely have control now. So are you teaching your kids how to think about things, or are you teaching them to hide from information that's scary?
I think you have the semblance of control right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's important, too, to recognize how much more damaging that information would be if they are 25 years old and have never heard it before and have been a part of this church and hear it for the first time. Mm-hmm. That's where you see a lot of these people who have left the church. There's that guy that went into the temple and filmed all the temple videos, and he's like one of the main people that's got it. Actually, I won't say what his YouTube channel name is, but I bumped into him on Reddit one time a couple years ago, just in the comment section. And I got to just kind of message back and forth with him a little bit and be like, dude, what's your deal? Why are you the way that you are, basically? The Michael Scott to Toby, I hate so much about the things you choose to be. But
you were not that way.
I got to just say, like, help me understand where you're coming from. Because it was like somebody had posted a picture of one of the temples, and in the comments, people were just ripping into the church. And so I was just commenting a little bit about, in response to how these people are getting into the church. And the guy said, I've gone into this conversation a million times. I'm not going to. I was on a podcast. Go listen to it and tell me what you think. And it was on the Mormon Stories podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're fairly critical of the church.
They have a billboard in Spanish Fork.
They do. And so this guy was on that podcast. It was in 3 different parts. And I watched the first 2 and half of the third. And in the first one, this man was very easy to empathize with. He just talked about had grown up in the church, had served a mission, was married in the temple, had all these different stories, and then was in his 30s and came across some, church or some literature that was against the church, and said that it just rocked his world, and he was very disappointed that he devoted his life to an organization that now he felt like he knew nothing about. And then in turn decided that he was going to make it his mission to ensure that people wouldn't fall into the same trap that he did. So he says.
Yeah, like the practicing piano trap. I quit the piano. No one else
exactly.
should play. Go ahead, sorry.
Yep. So So it was really interesting listening to this. I was like, you know what? I can see where you're coming from. I don't agree that you've gone down the right path. And he talked about, when he first started, it was in the early days when, faking a temple recommend was super easy and all these different things. And then it got to the point where they were putting barcodes on the temple recommends. And so he got really good at drawing barcodes so that he could make fake ones. Wow. He even went through the process just to see if he could do it of pretending to be a non-member, being converted, getting a calling in his ward and being baptized, and then getting a temple recommend after being baptized for the first time. So he made it seem. And then went to the temple again. And then came out and left the church again under his new fake name.
Sure.
So he had all these crazy stories, and the first episode, very easy to feel sympathy for him and to empathize with his feelings. In the second episode, his approach to the conversation is a lot more arrogant and a lot more, oh yeah, so I just learned how to draw barcodes, and then I did this, and the church was so foolish they didn't recognize. And it's more like, is the church foolish, or are they just trusting?
Well, yeah.
Are they expecting you to do the best?
That's the best part. Or they're supposed to have the spirit of discernment, and they can't even see a fake barcode? Like, really, dude? No one expects you. It's just a religious service, you know? It's not like you're infiltrating the CIA, you retard,
And if he, walked into the temple and burst into flames,
sure,
what more proof does anybody need that the church is true? It's got to leave some room for faith to be the key. So he had all these conversations, but talking to him about it was just kind of seeing his idea of saying, this is wrong, and I'm dedicating my life to prove that it's wrong, and dedicating his life to basically being that Bible basher and coming up against people who were firm and trying to convert him and making it his mission to convert them back. So he brought up a lot of good points. I had another previous professor at BYU, a religion teacher that I really liked and was really close with, who his main focus in the class was, let's talk about all the hard parts of the restoration now so you can hear it from a good source, and then you can take that information and do what you want with it. And so I went back to him, I sent him an email, and I said, hey, had this conversation. I want your advice on how to approach a response. He sent me these videos. I watched them. I don't want to argue with him. I'm not trying to keep regular contact with the guy. I just want to know, how do you recommend I respond? And he's like, honestly, just don't. You don't need to go back. Yeah. And so I never did. I never messaged the guy again. I just said, said to myself, thanks for sending me the videos and your point of view. It was eye-opening to see why people believe this system of beliefs, but, I'm going to take that information and go my own way. And in that same class, thinking back on it, we talked about, polygamy and the details of it, and talked about, the attacks on the church and all these things that normally are pretty hard for people to swallow when they come across these criticisms. But if you can bring those to your children first and say, look, this information's out there, you're going to find a lot of things, but you need to center on a testimony and be firm in that and know the truth, because if you know the truth, it's going to be harder for you to fall apart later. It's not going to be impossible. People with rock solid testimonies leave the church all the time, or whatever it may be, but it's important for them to create their own testimony based on those things and have the information and know that the root of it is the Book of Mormon true? Is Joseph Smith a prophet? Is Russell M. Nelson a prophet?
Saints 2, Volume 2. It does a good job of laying out the polygamy issue. So if you want to build a defense for your children against leaving the church, don't hide this information from them, but show them how the church positively affects their lives and develop that sense of gratitude for the church. And then they're a lot more willing to let go or to give the benefit of the doubt to the Lord, or to pray, I heard this, Lord. What do I do with it? Can you make me comfortable with it? Should I leave the church because of it? Don't be afraid to allow your kids to leave the church, because if you believe in the church, then you know that God's going to make them comfortable, as far as the anti-Mormon things go, it's it always comes back to something, and most people arguing don't even realize they're doing it, but you can always see, oh, okay, so you believe this, you felt betrayed here, now you left because your feelings got hurt more so than you found this new information that
that no one's ever seen before and has never been.
Yeah, and I 100% believe that you prayed whether you should leave the church. I strongly doubt that you were giving God the benefit of the doubt while you were praying, though.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize too that obviously the Lord has a plan for every person. It's not a real copy and paste formula. It doesn't happen the same for everybody. I had one of my companions on my mission had a good friend while we were in the mission field that was serving his mission, I believe in Brazil. And he felt very strongly. He was having a lot of personal family issues, and he felt that he needed to leave his mission and go home. And he had fasted and prayed about it, and the Spirit told him, you need to be with your family right now. That's more important for you and for your family, for you to be there than for you to be here. And he talked to his mission president, and his mission president says, no, you need to stay. And he kept praying and saying, I want to stay if I can, but I really do feel like I need to be there. And his mission president just kept telling him, no, you need to pray. Pray that you should stay here. And he's like, I'm praying on what I should do, and the Spirit is telling me I need to be with my family. And I think that those types of situations are rare. I think that when they happen, a lot of times in the church, we're not sure how to handle them because that's outside of the formula. But I think it's important to recognize that the Lord does have a plan. He knows what's right. He'll tell you with the Spirit in one way or another, whether it's over 20 years very slowly or, in a minute, and it's 20 times as powerful. You never know, but you just need to trust in Him and in the Spirit.
Yeah, and I've actually, along those lines, I've had the thoughts of, with Dennis Prager, an incredibly intelligent man, seems to be open to promptings from the Spirit. And I have wondered with Latter-day Saint friends who he dines with often, he spends a lot of time with, it's only a matter of time before you feel that Spirit from them, And I've wondered why he hasn't converted. And it's popped into my mind that his platform that he has now as a Jew serves the Lord better as far as bringing people to the light of Christ and to the religion, at least the religion that they were born into. And I honestly think that he will die ready to accept the ordinances, and when they're done for him, it'll happen. But I don't think it's his lot in this life to join the church, and I think that the Lord is withholding the Spirit of truth from him in order to keep him doing what he's doing. And I don't know. I think a lot of people would disagree with that. It's a lot of Latter-day Saints are like, it's convert or die, but it's not, is it? The whole point of this church is we're here to serve the world and give them their. And if he's doing more good as a Jew, keep doing it, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll take care of you when you die. So
Well, and what would the point of temple work be if that was the case?
Yeah, exactly. So I just think that just goes along with what you said about everyone's path is different. You know, my path's different from yours and Shadow's for sure. Jace's is different from all three of us. It's just, you know, the Lord's going to teach us the way that, fortunately for us, the Savior knows us better than anyone and knows how we have to learn it to come close to Him. So all we can do is trust the Lord, pray, and not be scared to pray about the hard things. Lord, should I be leaving the church right now? You know, or should I stay? You know, am I wrong here, Lord? Is it possible that I'm wrong? You know, it's prayer is a powerful tool I feel like if you utilize it correctly. So
Indeed. I think we're good.
Is this issue pushed?
Right off the cliff.
Yes.
Dope. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thanks for the invite.
I think
It was a pleasure.
I'd love to have you both more often for sure. I love the way you both think. I love the.
We can both be Golden's replacement, you know.
And it was
He's
Right.
pretty good. We
It
can't
was nice.
can't fill him with only one person.
takes
You need
two of you.
It was nice to have somebody to disagree with Rocky.
Yeah, no,
Bring me in. I'll do that whenever you want.
I do. No, I do appreciate it. It's refreshing to have someone that.
Because I think, like, you know, for me, I try to be as open-minded as possible.
Sure, and I do love that.
And, you know, though I would say I'm a conservative, I'm definitely more left-leaning than most conservatives. So I think I'm probably closer to the middle of the road or right in the center between conservative or liberal or libertarian or whatever. I don't really fully stick to one, but, you know, I'm happy to bring my opinion or whatever, maybe.
Dope. No, you both did a good job of putting me in my place, but you can't